Yay, you're financially free. Now, what do you do after financial freedom? Let's talk about it. All right, now maybe you're asking this question because you're not sure what to do after financial freedom. Well, that's what I want to dig into today, because that's something I've been able to do twice in my life. You know, not just once, but twice, because I screwed up the first time. But now I've been able to be financially free. And I want to kind of give you advice of what could help you determine that based on not just my own experience, but also experience of several of our clients who have also become financially free. So let's dive in. All right, so you're looking at financial freedom, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. That's the finish line. Like, if I can just get to be financially free, then my life is set. And then this is what happens, and this happens with a lot of our clients too, is that you get to that point and you say, now what? And this happened to me personally, right? Because remember, if you know my story, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe. But in my story, I used to be a financial advisor. I taught people how to become financially free, supposedly, by investing in their 401ks and IRAs and Roth IRAs and all these different types of investments, the traditional crap that you always hear from every other financial advisor on the planet, or at least in the US. And I was teaching all that. Now, after 4 years, I sat down with my dad. My dad was the penny pinching saver. He'd tried to make sure he was debt free, stuffed money in his 401k, getting the match, everything that every good boy and little girl should. And then at the end of it, nothing. He had money, yes. But I had to tell him, I said, Dad, listen, if you try to retire today, even though you're 61 years old, you've been so disciplined for so many years doing these things, you're going to have to die in about 5 or 6 years, because that's when you're going to run out of money. So if you don't die in 5 or 6 years, you're just going to starve. So my dad ended up working into his 70s before health forced him into retirement. And by the way, he's now lived longer than he expected. He's just trying to stretch out every dollar he can. He never got to experience financial freedom. And when I realized people weren't becoming financially free listening to my advice or any other financial advisor's advice for that reason, by the way, I know a few of you have made comments like, what kind of advice are you giving? The same advice you've been given by every financial advisor. That's what I was given. And so when I realized that none of my clients were financially free, like truly financially free, where they didn't worry about money, and neither were any of the financial advisors I've ever met, that's when I knew there was a problem. So I quit being a financial advisor. I ended up looking for people that were free, found real estate investors. I started to do the same thing. Now, I had always thought, this was what I thought financial freedom was, is that if I, as a financial advisor, if I just save up as much money as I can, I just be really cheap, I turn off the heat in the wintertime, turn off the AC in the summertime, if I just do all this stuff and I just try to be as cheap as possible, I guess I had a bunch of kids, so that didn't help. But if I try to be as cheap as possible and I just save up enough, if I can get to $2 million in my mutual funds, then I can live on the 3% and pull out $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month. Because in the early 2000s, $5,000 a month was pretty nice. That's almost like today having over $10,000 or $12,000 a month after inflation, right? So $5,000 a month to me, it seemed like a very comfortable lifestyle. So I was like, if I can just do this, I can save up and scrimp and save until my 40s, then I'll be free. Well, guess what? When I found out that wasn't really the case, now I started focusing, instead of accumulating my money, I tried to accelerate my money by investing for things that created passive income. This is where I started doing a lot more with real estate. But instead of just being the active guy, I wasn't trying to do flips and wholesaling and things like that some people claim as passive investing, which is not at all. It's not even investing, it's active business owners is what you are. Instead of doing that, I started doing more of the passive side. I started letting other investors do the work. And then I would pay them. I would invest money with them. I would actually pool my money with them and have them invested. Or I'd lend them money and get paid a return based on lending them money. And later that next year, in 2006, I was able to retire when I was 28, almost 29 years old. I had enough money coming in from my investments and everything else, all the streams of income coming in, that I was work optional. I could work because I want to, not because I had to. And I'll tell you, that was a scary place to be. Because I was like, great, now what? What do I do now? Because I had just spent all this time just trying to get to financial freedom, thinking it was going to be so far out, I'd never mentally prepared for what I would do after the fact. And it was even harder because you think about it, all my friends were in their late 20s too. They're all working their jobs, they're starting their careers, they're just trying to get ramped up. And I don't golf. I'm not like one of those people that go golf with old people. And so I didn't have anything to do. And I tried to raise my kids with my wife, but that wasn't working because she's like, listen, you got to get out of the house. You're driving me nuts. This is my domain. Go find your own domain. And so I tried to do a few different things. And the first thing I started to do is looking for passions, right? So my first thing was, all right, well, maybe I can do like something with ballroom dancing, because little known fact, I was one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers about 20 years ago. And so I started looking for things to do. I was like, well, maybe I can start a studio, right? And so or maybe I could do a dinner and dance business. So I actually found an old theater. It was like the Majestic with Jim Carrey, right? It was like this old time theater on a main street in a small town. I was like, if I convert this theater, I could turn it like a, maybe like a, it could just be, not just be a theater, maybe it's like I'll even do dance events and things like that in here too. So I was gonna buy that. But then someone told me, that doesn't feel quite right. Plus the renovations were ridiculously expensive because it was so run down. So then I looked at another place and I was gonna buy that. And I was actually at the table about ready to sign the papers. And then somebody told me, stop. So I stopped. I was like, I told my realtor, I said, you're gonna kill me, but I don't feel like I should sign on this to create this new dance studio. So I backed out. And within the next few months, the real calling came, because the one thing I do love doing all the time, even what was common, even with things I was trying to do with the dance part, is I love teaching. And so the thing that was happening at the time, because I was financially free, friends and family were like, how'd you do it? And I would teach them. Thing is, if I didn't charge them money, they wouldn't do jack squat about it, because if it doesn't hurt enough on your wallet, you don't do anything with advice. So I was given like this free advice and they were doing nothing with it. And so I started to realize, like, maybe I should coach this. Maybe I should coach about financial freedom. So you might be asking, what do you do after you become financially free? You go on YouTube and do videos about financial freedom, right? You don't have to do that. You can sit on the other side of this. You don't have to be in front of a camera or anything like that. But that's what I chose to do. I said, I'm going to teach people how to do it, because I want them to have that kind of life. I want them to have that freedom that I was able to enjoy too. And so that's what I started doing from like basically end of 2006 on, really for almost 20 years now, I've been doing that very thing. Now that's adjusted and evolved over time. And as I've learned to understand myself, I've also learned in different ways of how I can do it. I'll tell you this, this is something that's kind of that we don't often talk about on this channel, but I talk about divine genius, right? What's that unique combination of your strengths, your passions, your talents, and everything you can combine together, your experiences, everything you can mesh together to then use that in a way that delivers great value to people. It's kind of like, how do you leave that footprint on the planet, as Steve Jobs said, right? Like, what is it you can do that can better people's lives? Because the truth is, I could be just happy living on about $50,000 a month of passive income right now. I can shut down everything. I can shut down Money Ripples and the channel and be just fine. But it's kind of like the movie Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility, or however the phrase goes. And I believe that when I've been blessed, I'm religious, it's like I'm spiritual, I believe in God. I believe that when you've been blessed with things, you should share it. You shouldn't just sit around and enjoy the fruits of your labors only. Is that you should be able to do something that blesses other lives. It doesn't mean you have to teach. It could mean that maybe you go and do that volunteer project you've always wanted to do, start that nonprofit. It could be something that you actually start another business, but maybe it's your passion project, something you've always wanted to do, but never gave yourself permission to do. I've had clients that actually went and traveled to like Mexico or Costa Rica and then would homeschool their kids. They're like, I'm gonna focus on homeschooling and do that. My wife does the same thing, like homeschool their kids and give them a real experience outside of the US, or outside of the typical place where they're growing up in that state or whatever it might be. Meeting new people and doing new things. It might be that you might want to just do something where you want to consult businesses. I have some clients that went and consulted people. I've had other clients that, he would do different projects. He would handpick and select different projects. He was in the military, he left it, he went to the private sector, and he would do different projects that he thought were fun. That's the great thing about financial freedom. You can do whatever you want, right? And that's why it's so important to create financial freedom, because I truly believe that God can work through you. God can work through you and be able to create ways for you to be able to bless more lives, because having that financial freedom, that money can be a magnifier. It magnifies your soul. Now, if you're a crappy person, I don't want you to have more money, because you just make the world more crappy, right? But if you're a great person, it's so nice when you have that freedom, when you stop worrying about yourself and you can focus on others and deliver that out to the world. Now, if you're still trying to get the financial freedom and wondering now what to do, first decide what you want to do, because I'll tell you, it'll get you to financial freedom faster. Many people will subconsciously sabotage the results to get to financial freedom because they're afraid of what happens next. First, identify what you want next, and then secondly, figure out, now, how am I going to get there? You want to learn how to get there? Subscribe to our channel at Money Ripples today.